People with Forrest Wilson. And now, here's Forrest Wilson.
Hello and welcome to The Resistance. Your host, Forrest Wilson, AM 600 and 100.3, The Answer. If you happen to call in today and you don't want to be on the air, still leave your address and we're going to send you freedom documents, courtesy of We the People, 1787. These documents really summarize what our country's all about. It's got the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, amongst other documents. And last week, trending in the media, it was really focused on two news stories, and those were the continuing protests and violence in Ferguson, Missouri, and the beheading of journalist James Foley. I also pointed you to something last week that I really think you need to look at, and that is that plea to the Iraqi parliament by a Yazidi woman. And I just think that is one of the strongest pleas that I've seen as of yet to take action against ISIS. It certainly doesn't seem to be coming from the leadership in Washington. But both of these stories point to a need to change some of our representatives in Washington as well as at the state level. Think about the reaction to the shooting of Michael Brown. You have racially charged rhetoric on both sides of this situation, and Governor Jay Nixon's remarks, which apparently indict the officer Darren Wilson in the shooting of Michael Brown. And this thing that I'm about to read you was posted on Governor Jay Nixon's website last week. I might add he's a Democrat. It says a vigorous prosecution must now be pursued regarding Officer Wilson. The democratically elected St. Louis County prosecutor and the Attorney General of the United States each have a job to do. Their obligation to achieve justice in the shooting death of Michael Brown must be carried out thoroughly, promptly, and correctly, and I call upon them to meet those expectations. I guess he expects that this particular officer be prosecuted. Look, I'm not going to tell you that there's not racial tension in this country. There is. And I think a lot of it's being fomented by those in Washington, certainly at the federal level, and most notably Eric Holder and Barack Obama. But, you know, in this little note that Jay Nixon posted on his website, there's really no mention made of Officer Darren Wilson, nor the due process which should be afforded to him as part of the investigation into the shooting. And look, if he shot this teenager and he did something illegal, I'm all for prosecuting him. But it looks, by all accounts and all reports, with the exception of a few, that that's not the case. In other words, he was attacked by Michael Brown, and he responded to that attack. And by the way, an attack on an officer of the law is a felony. But I certainly believe there needs to be an investigation. I think the circumstances are such that the Brown family, as well as Officer Wilson, deserve that due process. It was also announced that the National Guard would be pulled from Ferguson before the announcement of the grand jury's decision to indict Officer Darren Wilson. I mean, now this is from a Democrat. Does this sound similar to the announcement to pull out troops out of Iraq by President Barack Obama? I mean, what if the grand jury does not indict Officer Wilson? There may be more trouble, and there will be no National Guard there to protect the citizens of Ferguson as well as the insurgents. And then you've got the barbaric beheading of James Foley by an ISIS fighter. And it reminds us that we're at war with radical Islam. Look, we've been at war with radical Islam. I went to work for CIA in 1989, and my very first briefing was on the rise of Islamic fundamentalism, and it would be a mere 3.5 years before I'd be faced at a traffic light, 1 block back, with an Islamic militant shooting into the cars, attempting to turn into CIA headquarters. But many have said that this is an act of war and we should re-engage in Iraq. I believe this threat must be dealt with, and soon. But we have the Obama administration continuing to have a strategy that is weak at best. I mean, bombing these guys is not going to stop their forward advance. We've managed to lose a war we won, and it is now beginning to look like the early days of Vietnam, with military advisors on the ground and airstrikes attempting to stop the forward campaign being waged by ISIS. Now, I've been very critical of this administration and its policies, and I believe we are committing a serious military blunder with the open border policy. Whether or not it's an official policy or not, that's the net result. We have open borders. But don't you think Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, and good old Corrine Brown would be down at the border building a fence if the majority of these illegal aliens crossing into this country largely leaned right and supported the Republican Party? And this is just in. Federal authorities sent a bulletin to U.S. law enforcement on Friday in light of the threat concerning militants from the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, otherwise known as ISIS, according to CBS News. The bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI cites no known threat to the U.S. homeland, but reminds law enforcement to be alert and aware of the ISIS threat, CBS reported this just in. So we're at war with radical Islam, Mr. President, and if we do not get engaged, you can expect the fight to come here, and it may be too late. Now, I know many are disheartened with our political leadership, and I often hear, well, I call my representative and nothing happens. Well, today I want to bring forth 4 candidates. It's going to be a very busy show. If Washington is not listening, it's time to replace Washington, don't you think? If the state legislatures are not listening, it's time to replace those representatives. And in the case of our school boards and Common Core, if they're not listening, it's time to replace those school board members. 2 congressional representatives, I believe need to be replaced, and can be, are Andrew Crenshaw and Corrine Brown. They presided over the doubling of the federal debt, the growth of the federal agencies, and have left our borders open in a time of war. I don't care what Andrew Crenshaw says. It happened on his watch. And I believe we have several citizens ready to stand up and make a difference. My first guest is Ryman Schoaf. He's a main challenger against Andrew Crenshaw for Florida's 4th Congressional District, and he's been on the show before. Ryman, welcome back to The Resistance.
Hello, Forrest. How are we doing today?
I'm doing real good, and I want to kick it off with a short bio that you give on yourself and talk about your military career and your allegiance to the United States.
Well, I'm a 27-year veteran of the Navy. Started out at the Citadel, so if you take those 4 years in there, actually wore a uniform for 31 years. I did 2 tours out of Cecil Field when it was a Navy base. I had 2 commands at NES Jacksonville when I was here, and then I did 8 total deployments, and 3 of those 8 deployments was out of Mayport, 2 on the Forrestal, and she was here, and one on the Kennedy. Of course, I've been stationed all over the world. Spent 2 years in Japan, there on the Independence and the Kitty Hawk. My last 4 years in the Navy, I was stationed in Washington, D.C., where I taught national security strategy and policy at the National War College. And many people have heard me tell this story before, but we're very familiar with what happened in Benghazi with Ambassador Chris Stevens. And Chris was a friend of mine, and he was one of my students. Very smart guy, loved the State Department, loved Arab culture, loved America, and it's kind of shameful how this administration, what they allowed to happen to him. So when you know someone personally that is killed because of the inadequacy and the incompetence of this administration, then it really gets to you. But that's my background, and I'm one of those people that when I see something that I don't like, I can either sit on the sidelines and do nothing, or I can get up and do something. And running against Andrew Crenshaw is my something, because I don't like what I see in Washington, D.C., and I want to step out and give it everything I can so that when somebody calls because they have an issue, they can actually get through to the office or myself, so maybe we can make a difference in our country by just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing.
Well, and there are many issues facing our country, and I really want to focus on 3: governance, security, and the economy. And what would you do to stop the implementation of the Affordable Health Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, if elected?
Well, I think that the strategy where we're going to have to go with that is we are so far down the road in the implementation of this so-called Affordable Health Care Act. First of all, it's not health care, it's health insurance. And health insurance is not health care. That's 2 separate things. And it's not affordable, it's unaffordable. So we don't have the Affordable Health Care Act. What we have is the Unaffordable Insurance Act. And I will point out that Congressman Crenshaw could have taken Obamacare in two places. He could have taken it here in Jacksonville, or he could take it in D.C. He took it in D.C. because he gets an extra $10,000 a year if he takes it in D.C. But the folks down here in Jacksonville, we don't get that kind of support. So, but I guess he got an extra $10,000 up there. But that's neither here nor there, because I'm going to do everything I can come Tuesday to make sure that he's being replaced. We won't have to worry about that anymore. But you asked me a specific question, and I think where we are is that as we move forward on the implementation of this bill, be very specific of how this bill is hurting individuals, and then move to pick that apart piece by piece by piece, whatever the issue is. And gradually we'll take that bill down till it's no longer hurting people. I think that's a strategy where we need to go now. I mean, I think the chance of just wholesale replacing it, in one big massive piece of legislation, that might be in the past. I mean, I'm all for that. I'd love to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act, but you know what? If strategy is making sure that you have a backup plan, and I'm thinking that maybe the backup plan where we need to go now is start picking that thing off piece by piece so that we're not hurting people.
Excellent. I've got two more questions for you, and we've got to take a short break, but right after the break, I want to continue with my guest, Ryman Shoaf. We've got three other guests that I want you to hear today. It's so important to replace some of these people. If you're dissatisfied, this is the place to be. You're listening to The Resistance, AM 600, FM 100.3, The Answer.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Hi, we're back. Forrest Wilson with my guest, Ryman Shoaf, running for the congressional office that Andrew Crenshaw currently holds. And Ryman, one of the issues that we have facing this country is the open border policy. Whether they call it that or not, we've effectively got an open border policy in this country. What can you do about that if elected?
Well, when I talk to individuals, and I've done 76, I had my 76th living room session last night, and some of those living room sessions have been as large as 65 people. And when we start talking about the border, what you see when you turn on the news is they like to take the immigration and the border and put it in as one issue, and it's not. It's two separate issues. Immigration is an immigration problem, but the securing of the border is not about immigration. The securing of the border is a national security issue. The problem with that is that in Congress, we're the legislative branch. Our job is to pass the laws and make sure that the government is well funded so that we can go in and make sure our country is secure. The problem is that we have a president who has taken an oath to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, and he has not done that. And so, it's the responsibility of the executive branch to make sure our nation is safe. Now, let's think about this. We have children that are coming across the border. When we talk to people get emotional about that. And my thoughts on it is these are children without their parents. Children should be back with their parents, not in some foreign country without their parents. But on a national security issue, if children can just walk across the border, how hard is it for someone to walk across the border who wants to commit another 9/11 on us? Would be very easy. I'm thinking if children can do that, then a grown-up could do that easily who wants to do us harm. So this is a very important issue that the executive branch needs to execute and secure the borders. And I firmly believe that we're really not going to see any movement on this until we elect a president that when he takes an oath to faithfully execute the laws of this nation, that he will do that. And this president has not done that at all.
Well, I really have two fears. One of them is an attack on an American city, and then the resulting attack on Congress and the administration for not securing the border by the American people. I want to have you briefly touch on the economy. Our economy continues to sputter. It's I believe we're overregulated. We've got over 500 regulatory agencies at the federal level, not to mention the state. What can Congress do about relaxing some of the burdens on business, small and large?
That's a great question, and the answer is we have regulatory commissions that are absolutely out of control. It really bothers me in a country that prides itself on freedom and liberty that I have people telling me, Ryman, I would really like to give your campaign a check, but I'm afraid if I do, because we have to be transparent. Everybody gives me a check, their name is on a list with how much they gave. And we only take individual money from individuals. We don't do corporations. We're not into that. Corporations, don't vote. Individuals vote. I want to represent individuals, not big corporations. But I have individuals who tell me, I don't want to give you a check because I'm afraid the IRS will audit me. My goodness, what kind of country do we live in that people are afraid to support a candidate who has their views because they're afraid their government will come after them? That is not a land of the free. And what we need to do is since the Constitution gave the House the purse strings, you don't know how much I would love to tell the EPA, you know what, your budget's been cut in half. And if I hear any complaining, then you know what, we'll cut it in half again. And maybe you'll get off the backs of these Americans who are just trying to make a living, trying to provide a service, trying to, get a resource from the earth or wherever, and trying to produce some wealth for this great country. I've told people this numerous times. There's been 4 presidents, Coolidge, Kennedy, Reagan, and Bush 43, who all did the same things. They all cut taxes. They all tried to cut regulation the best they could. And what happened to the economies under those 4 presidents? Economy boomed. This is no secret. If you get out of the way of people, they will create the wealth and the jobs that is needed. I mean, I remind people that under Reagan, there was 1 month in his administration where the economy created 1 million jobs. Think about that. 1 million jobs in 30 days. And right now, we have 21 million Americans who are still looking for a job. That's not counting the ones that are just flat out given up. The 21 million people who are still looking for a job. And I've been at these living room sessions where people have told me, Ryman, what really aggravates me is those folks that are riding in the wagon. And my comment to that is, what really frustrates me are those people that are riding in the wagon that would like to be pulling the wagon, but can't pull the wagon because they can't get a job in this economy. I mean, it's Obamaville. It really is. This is Obamaville. Can't get a job, you're living in Obamaville.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time. How do people get in touch with your campaign?
You can go to RymanShoaf.com, or you can go on Facebook at Ryman Shoaf, or you can email me at RymanShoaf@RymanShoaf.com. And I was walking door to door today. We'll be walking tomorrow after church, and we'll be making lots of phone calls between now and then. And I'm asking people that if you want some change, Tuesday's your chance. There's only 2 people on this ballot, myself and Anna Crenshaw, and we would love to have folks go out and support me. That's
right. Tuesday, you get elected potentially because it is a primary election. There is no Democrat challenger. And so Tuesday is the day. Now, you can do early voting until Sunday at what time?
I'm not sure on that time.
I think it's 6 o'clock. I think the polls are open until 6. But get out and vote. I hope you'll vote for Ryman Shoaf. Again, Ryman, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Forrest. I appreciate it.
Okay, so there's one candidate, and, we face so many problems in this country right now. I mean, from the economy, the threat of ISIS, our crushing national debt, and many others. Corrine Brown has been a congresswoman for 20-plus years, and during her time in Washington, we've seen many of these issues metastasize. She's a progressive, and she really needs to retire. And I'm in hopes that our next guest will be able to accomplish that. And I want to bring you these candidates today. I've got 3 more to interview here in the next 30 minutes. And I want you to stay tuned because each of these people are standing up really for the first time. And this is what it's going to take. This is how we get real change, because the people that are up there now, the incumbents, and I would say probably anyone elected before 2010, we're going to get more of the same if we allow these people to become reelected. And I don't think America can stand much more of this. I know I can't. We have a little bit of difficulty. I think we've got our candidate in. In any event, my next guest is hoping to retire Congresswoman Brown, and her name is Glo Smith. Glo, is that you?
It is. Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're very welcome. Listen, I appreciate you coming back. And we had a little bit of technical difficulty. We're trying to bring forth 4 candidates today that represent real change. And I don't believe you've held public office before. Is that correct?
I have not, but I have worked for Governor Scott and for Jennifer Carroll. So I've worked for elected officials, and I bring with that experience, my experience of other community and involvement, working with other candidates as well.
And there are many issues facing this country right now, and I really want to focus on three on the federal side. And one of them is, if you were elected, what could you do to help stop the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to continue that path of trying to repeal it. But if it is not repealed, then our backup plan has to be ready. We have to be ready to introduce and to put forth the Republican plans regarding health care. And then at the very least, we have to defund Obamacare. That's the only way, other than repealing, that we're going to be able to stop Obamacare. So it's important that people understand that just the new taxes that we will have to pay over the next 10 years is in the trillions of dollars. And so that's important for our constituents. We've got to make sure that we put forth not a health care plan ran by the federal government, but a plan that's going to allow people to purchase insurance across state lines, still cover. There are some things in Obamacare that we probably can still keep, still cover people with pre-existing conditions and some other things. But, I tell people all the time, the important issue is not Obamacare and health care, because that's what most people think when they hear it.
Glo, we're going to have to take a hard break, but I want to hold you over and continue the conversation. You're listening to Forrest Wilson and the Resistance, AM 600, FM 100.3, The Answer. We'll be back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Hi, and we're back. You're listening to The Resistance. My guest, Glo Smith. I'm trying to bring four candidates that can make a difference. None have served in public office before. Glo, we were talking about the Affordable Health Care Act and what we might be able to do to avert this disaster. Let's continue with that.
And so what I was saying was, and one of the things I talked to the constituents about is, Obamacare is not just about health care. That's the icing on the cake. The cake is what we really need to be seriously concerned about, and that's that intrusion of the government into our lives. It's the taxes that go along with it. It's the misrepresentation of what's going to happen as far as people being able to select their own physicians. It's that challenging us to, I think, a lower standard and quality of health care as we know it. And so there's a whole lot of other things that's wrapped up in Obamacare that I'm concerned about. Of course, this president likes to use Obamacare, and so many other people like to use Obamacare as saying everyone needs health care. But I promise you that that's only the tip of the iceberg. It's those other things. It's the takeover of this particular industry. It's huge for the federal government to do so. So if we're going to talk about health care, that's one thing. But when you look very closely at the bill, and I have been reading the bill for the last 3 years, and I'm not halfway finished because every time I start to read the bill, I have to look at the regulations, which seems to change really on a weekly basis. So I'm having trouble comprehending, and it definitely is going to be an issue. But there are some other serious things that I'm concerned about with Obamacare that most people don't talk about.
Well, let's switch gears to security, because, the net result that we've got in this country is an open border policy, whether it's official or not. We've got open borders. What could you do as a congresswoman to stop illegals from walking across that border and the potential security threat that an open border represents?
Right. I think one of the things that we have to do, not just Congress, but people, American citizens, to get involved and to be educated on the issues. A lot of people think that what the president doing is right. I feel for the people that are in these countries that are suffering, but we cannot take care of them at the cost of risking Americans' lives. And that is, one, with our Border Patrol agents, having them babysit as opposed to doing their job and enforcing the laws. My opponent talks often about comprehensive immigration reform, and then I support that. I support immigration reform. I don't support, like she does, enforcing all the books on the laws, because I'm very concerned with the things that this president has signed into law since he has been elected. You know, the discretionary issues that come up with law enforcement and with criminals, honestly, criminals that are illegals that are allowed to be in this country, and then we leave it up to certain law enforcement officers to say this law is okay, this one is not. I am not. I do think immigration reform has to be addressed. We have to protect our borders, but most of all, we must enforce our laws with our agents. They know what's right. You know, we need to allow our governors to protect their borders, and if it means that they have to call in the National Guard, then that's what we need to do. But we've got to address this president in only the fashion that I think he's used to, and that is, what do we need to do to cut his purse strings? Why should we be spending money to support these immigrants when we have people in America that needs help? My idea is take care of America first, protect our borders, and make sure that we look at the laws, not all of them, and say, I'm just in support of them, because, again, I'm not.
Well, finally, I want to wrap up with the economy. And, you know, we've got over 500 federal agencies that have regulatory authority. What can we do, and certainly if you're elected, what could you do to help thwart some of the central planning?
Immediately, let's eliminate a third of them off the bat. We have so many redundancy agencies out there that provide the services that honestly we don't need, and so we've got to look at cutting these federal agencies. You know, all of these czars that the president have appointed, we've got to get rid of those positions, but we must make sure that we're funding our military properly and fully, and our veterans. We've got to put them first. We need to bring education back to the state. Get rid of the Department of Education. It should not be at the federal level. There are so many things that are happening at the federal level that we must come together and stop. You know, when I'm out talking to people about what's going on in the 5th District, they're concerned about economic development and jobs. They're concerned about taking care of their families. Most people don't see that because all they think is everyone on the 5th District is on entitlement programs. So that's not true. We talk to people on entitlement programs and talk about ways to make those empowerment programs. One of the things that I will do when I get to Congress is introduce what we don't have in this country, and that's a gradual step-down plan to help people on entitlement programs get off of them. Right now, we have people that are on entitlement programs, and it's generational. It was their mothers, their grandmothers, and it's them and their children. So we've got to address that. And unlike my opponent, I happen to know that it's all people that are on entitlement programs. There's no just one segment of people or race of people that take it, you know, that receive more benefits than another. We have got to understand that we've got to create empowerment programs, get people back to work, make sure that they have jobs, make sure they understand that we want to have them take care of their families. And yes, there are going to be times when everybody, you know, at some point all of us need help. But what does that look like, and how do we make sure that we address that in such a way where it is not offensive? Because I'm out there every day, and as a conservative Republican, I'm in Orlando today, and I've just finished talking to people. They only think that Republicans want to take away everything. We want them to starve. We want to keep them from working, and that's not true. And that's not even a racial thing again. I hear that across the board from all of our constituents that are Democrats, and I said, that's not true. What we want to do is empower you. What we want to do is protect our Constitution, protect our amendments, protect your rights, you know, as an American citizen. So when we start talking about that, those are the issues that they're concerned with. They want a representative in Congress that have the experience. I have a proven record when it comes to business. I've provided community service. Yes, I've been a homemaker, but I've also been a business owner. And so those things set me apart. When you look and see my community service, my community outreach, and my business experience working with veterans all across the state of Florida, whether I'm teaching workshops or just being a mentor, those are things that people are interested in. There are some distinct differences between me and my opponent, and so I need people to vote for me on August 26th because I am the candidate that will challenge Corrine Brown and that can challenge Corrine Brown in the 5th District.
Well, I am truly inspired by your campaign, Glow, and how do people get in touch with your campaign? What's your website?
My website is Glow for Congress. That's GLOFOR Congress.com, and my phone number is all there on the contact page. They're welcome to call me. They can like me, like our Facebook page, and communicate that way as well. It's important that people get serious about this 5th District and understand that change has to happen, and it comes on Tuesday. It begins on Tuesday when they vote for me to challenge Corrine in November.
I want to thank you again for your time today, Glow, and I do wish you the best of luck.
All right. Thank you so much, and have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to your listening audience. Bye-bye.
Well, at the state level, you know, there are many things that can be done to thwart the efforts of the central planners. so many of the challenges facing us are administered at the state and local level. And my next guest is a Republican candidate for the Florida House of Representatives, District 15. And I don't believe he's ever served, but he's a military veteran, a former prosecutor, and a local business attorney. Paul Renner, welcome to the show.
Hey, Forrest, how are you?
Good. Sorry about the little technical glitch earlier, but we're literally trying to bring forth 4 candidates today that have never served, that are bravely standing up against this administration and against the incumbents. And what kind of policies can we pursue here in Florida that will promote a strong economy and job growth?
Well, I think first and foremost, what I'd like to see, in addition to keeping our taxes as low as possible, is I'd like to see us place a sunset on all regulations that affect the private sector. And what I mean by that is, the legislature passes a law, and it grows and grows as it gets through the administrative state, through the bureaucrats to add, additional regulation. And, of course, they're not elected by the people. And so we always see a ratcheting up of government and never a ratcheting down. And so conservatives have always talked about this and complained about it, and I think one way we can address it is to require any regulation that affects the private sector to come back to the legislature for reapproval, basically, on a set time frame. And that, I think, would allow us to look at some things that, when something was passed in the 50s, it just doesn't apply to the 2014 economy. Or, a lot of times politics is reactive, and people go out and say, we're never going to let this 1 in a million accident ever happen again. Well, it was a 1 in a million accident that probably never would happen again. But now we place some regulation on every business in Florida that is a weight on economic growth. So that's one thing we ought to do. Now, you talked about central planners, and I think as a conservative, one thing we really got to speak up for is the 10th Amendment, and make sure that the states are reasserting their proper role in our system. The founders were wise about distributing power and not having power concentrated in any one branch of government, or including in federalism, by dispersing power to the states, the local government, where the biggest part of that pyramid ought to be we the people, and the smallest should be the federal government. We've kind of taken that pyramid and turned it upside down, in my opinion. So I think rediscovering and fighting for the 10th Amendment here at the state level is important, in saying to the federal government, look, we'll have a partnership on issues, but it's not a master-servant relationship. It's got to be a true partnership. And so those are some things on my mind when it comes to those issues.
Well, yeah, what the federal government does, and I guess it happens at the state level too, they pass a bill and then they give rulemaking authority to various agencies that go about expanding the bill and expanding the rules surrounding the law. And,
that's right.
And you see that in the 500 or so various federal agencies that are doing just that right now. Some of the issues facing the state of Florida are really they're a combination of issues created by the federal government and in some instances the state government. What do you really see as the biggest issues facing Florida right now?
Well, it really is keeping the economy strong. There are other issues here locally, such as deepening of our port, that I think would be a direct economic benefit to our community, and so I support that. I think it needs to move forward. Cecil Commerce, which is in the west side of Jacksonville, is important to the economic vitality of the west side, and we have aerospace and other high-tech industries and jobs that are coming into that area, as well as distribution centers and the type of things, logistics industries, that will benefit from a deepening of our port. So more goods coming through requires more movement and logistics support, and that will be a benefit to our community here on the west side.
Paul, I'd like to hold you over on this break and finish up. You're listening to The Resistance with Forrest Wilson. My guest is Paul Renner. He's running for the Florida legislature in District 15. I hope you'll stay tuned.
Now, my girl, you're so young and pretty.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
I'm talking to Paul Renner. He is a candidate for the Florida House of Representatives, District 15. And Paul, we had left off really talking about what the state can do to thwart the advances of the federal government. I'd like to continue with that.
Yeah, and another thing that needs to be stated is I'm a strong opponent of Medicaid expansion under Obamacare, which is one place that's pretty obvious where the State House has been strong on that issue. They need to stay strong, and I'll continue to oppose the expansion of Medicaid, the Obamacare expansion of Medicaid here in Florida. That's another thing we can do. And beyond that, it's just maintaining vigilance to make sure that the state is continuing to do what belongs to the state, such as education and our health care, and asserting itself in the traditional roles that states have had control over. And the federal government, if given the opportunity, will encroach on all of those areas. And I think it really just comes down to who's going to be in control. Is the government going to be in control, or are we going to be in control of the decisions that are most important to us? And so as a conservative, that's where I'll be pushing in that direction on every issue that comes up to make sure that we have more choice, not the government, and continue to make sure we're supporting the limited government that our founders gave us. And go ahead.
No, finish your thought there.
Well, I was just going to say, I think in this race, there's really a choice of leadership. I've been in the military and served in 2 wars, a former prosecutor, business attorney, as you mentioned at the outset, and also a partner in that firm, so I've signed the front of a check as well as the back of the check. So I think I've got the broadest experience of 2 candidates in the race, but also that leadership under pressure. I mean, conservatives, I'm one of those that want elected leaders that have leadership and are going to stand up and not buckle. And so that's what I intend to do in Tallahassee, and I think the choice on Tuesday is one about leadership. And gosh, we need not just one, we need 120 in the State House and 40 in the State Senate to make sure the state continues going on the right direction. And we need to fix Congress with the same type of leadership. And we have a paucity of veterans. We used to have over 70% in Congress. Now it's about 20%. And so on Tuesday we can put a veteran in the State House at least that's got common sense conservative ideas that will lead our state in the right direction.
And how do people get in touch with your campaign, Paul?
The website is voterenner.com, and our email is voterenner@gmail.com, and our campaign number is 248-0055, 248-0055.
Well, I really want to thank you today for coming on the show. I certainly thank you for standing up. I think it's important, and I think that you're one of the very critical candidates that we need to get elected, and I want to thank you again, Paul.
Thank you, Forrest. It's a pleasure.
Okay, well, we've been through 3 candidates that I have a lot of faith in, and I really wanted to bring them forth because I wanted you to hear in their own words how they address the various issues facing this country. And I've got a final candidate that I want to bring to you, and this is someone who has been involved in education for most of her career, and education is so critical to this nation. It is the future of our nation because, without it, or without a good educational system, we're going to wind up with more of the same. And there seems to be this plan to drive the lessons in the classroom from distant places like Washington, D.C. I personally believe that this Common Core thing is a push that is nothing short of common indoctrination. I'm already suspicious of the Department of Education, and I agree that it ought to be shut down in the abysmal state of our public education system. But my next guest is running for the St. Johns County School Board, District 3. Her name is Karen Harvey, and she's an author and a teaching historian. Karen, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and I agree with everything you just said. The federal government is encroaching on our educational system in a very bad way.
And I appreciate your concurrence. I'm a product of the public education system. I was fortunate in that I had the presence of mind to go back and re-educate myself with 2 forays into some fine collegiate institutions. But you're running against an incumbent and who's set on implementing this Common Core in the school system. I want you to talk about Common Core and the danger to the public education system.
All right, I'll start by saying that when the school board voted this in, my incumbent was the deciding factor in voting it in. And the problem was the memorandum of understanding had not been read. Nobody knew how much it would cost, and no one had read the standards. The standards are not written up by local people. They're written up by a group in Washington, D.C., and they go out to all of the schools. The point in people liking this is that you can take your child from one state to another and they'd be at the same level. Well, that doesn't work at all, and it's an impossible concept. The people in Massachusetts are not going to be wanting to have the same standards as the people in Alabama do. And it simply does not work. Besides which, Common Core is affecting our school system, and our schools are really wonderful here in St. Johns County. They've been number one for 6 years. Over the past 10 years, they've grown and developed under the leadership of our superintendent, Dr. Joseph Joyner, and we are extremely proud of our schools, and we want to help them stay good and even get better, and that won't happen with Common Core. Common Core is teaching to a test. That's all it is.
And you've got some experience. You've been a teacher for how many years?
Actually, I'm not a teacher in the classroom. I have taught in the classroom, but not on a regular basis. What I do is I talk to people. I'm a history writer, and so I give lectures. I also give tours, and I take fourth grade groups around and show them St. Augustine. So I'm teaching in that way. But the only time I was in the classroom was once when I taught in college, and then for 2 years as a substitute teacher here in St. Augustine.
Well, what's interesting...
This is fine. A lot of people have made the point that it's better to have somebody on the school board that is not a career teacher. Career teachers see things one way, but if you are not a career teacher, you get a broader viewpoint, and if you've been in business, and I have, then you can see things a little bit better as far as budgeting and how to just oversee the general school district.
Well, what's interesting about your school district is this is one of the best in the nation. Number one for the past 6 years. Why wouldn't they want to export what you've done there to other school districts? Why would they want to import something like Common Core?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, we're first in the state, but very top in the nation, not first, but up at the top, because Common Core makes that impossible to do. One county in the state, Lee County, is in the process of repealing it now, and each county has to make that choice, and that's why I feel very optimistic that we can do this. Enough people know that our school system is really good, and if we take the horse by the reins and get out of it, I think other counties would follow through also. There's something called the Florida State Rules or Sunshine State Standards, something like that, which is really Common Core by another name. Nothing has changed. It's still teaching kids how to take tests and modifying textbooks in a way that is not appropriate, and using new math, which means parents can't help their children at home. In a lot of ways, parents are losing control, and that's another thing that we have to be very careful about. We want to make sure that teachers and parents know what's going on, not somebody up in Washington, D.C., telling them what to do.
And you're, let's see, you are in a, there are no Democrat challengers in your race, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you could be elected on Tuesday, is that correct?
I think the way it works is it would have to be 51%. I know that I did very well today getting votes, and people told me I have voted for you. And we.
How did they get in touch with your campaign?
That way. What might happen is that Bill Mignon and I will be the top two, and then we run again in November.
Well, I hope you'll vote for Karen Harvey and School Board District 3, St. Johns County. Karen, I want to thank you for coming to the show today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, there's the 4 candidates. I wish you the best. I hope you'll vote on Tuesday. You've been resisted. AM 600 and FM 100.3, The Answer. Thank you for tuning in.
Don't you understand what I'm